Hello, everybody. My name is Reagan Archibald, and the reason I do these videos and the reason we have this show is because a lot of people are unhealthy, and I don't want you to be one of them. I'm the founder of East West Health, which is an age reversal company that allows you to become unreasonably healthy in the shortest amount of time without sacrificing the most enjoyable parts of life. Your time is your most valuable resource that you have, and so I want to give you easy ways to stay healthy so that you make your next decade your best decade. And by the way, if you enjoy the show, please leave us a review and we will love you forever. And please enjoy the show.
Unreasonable Health Podcast. This is your host of the day, Kate Archibald, and really excited to dive in today. We got Reagan Archibald with us. Reagan, how's it going?
It's going great. Great day.
Beautiful day. And we're going to be diving into some really cool stuff. Can't wait to cover the content today that we got prepared for you all. Before we dive into that, just a couple of announcements. Last night we had our hack. If you're not a part of our Health Accelerator community, go to acueastwest.com/hack and dive in. We covered some really cool stuff on muscle building, protein building, and we got some really cool challenge this week is to eat. It's half your body weight in grams of protein. Did I get that right, Reagan?
Yeah.
And,
it's one. Actually, if you didn't, that's the hydration challenge. Is half your body weight
it's your full body weight, your goal body weight in protein. In grams.
Yeah. So if you're 150 pounds, and an easy way to reference it is like, okay, well, 1 ounce of meat has roughly 7 grams of protein. So you're going to need approximately 1.5 pounds of meat in order to get the protein that you want, especially if you're over 40 and protein synthesis is not as sensitive as we age. So yeah, so listen, you'll hear that in the episode before. And so get on that. I think you guys will love it. Make sure I love ballerina farms. There's lots of local farms all around you that have really good sources of high quality meat. And then we did talk about fish. And so for those of you who, turn your nose up at sardines, I feel bad for you because they are a healthy source of protein and great for you. So get your anchovies, your sardines. Salmon are a safer fish as well. And then, make sure if you're eating a lot of tuna, you got to be careful with some of the heavy metals and mercury specifically that can get in some of those bigger fishes. But that was what we talked about yesterday, and you'll hear that in the show. So hopefully go back and listen to the last episode.
Awesome. Yeah. Dive into that. Well, let's jump in today. We got a lot of cool stuff to cover. And some really cool stuff coming up.
Yes. So one of the big goals that we have is we're hosting a mastermind, and we've done this for several groups in the past. Where if you are somebody who is an entrepreneur who has either an executive team or your management team, we can do this for you. We're currently doing this with Mike Koenigs and Christina Wise with their masterminds. But what we do is we run labs before the event, and then when people come into the event, we actually share. We don't share your personal information; you don't have to worry about that. But we actually go through and coach you and explain what each of the markers in the labs mean. And what happens is I see people in the groups where there's questions being asked, why is my alk phos level so low? What does that mean? And then we talk about the fact that it means you've got a zinc deficiency, and there's some possibility of leaky gut and intestinal permeability. And then the other person will say, hey, what does it mean when ALT is high and AST? And I said, well, these are your liver enzymes. And so there's a great collaboration that happens, because I think too often healthcare is put in a vacuum, and it's yes, I believe in HIPAA, don't get me wrong, but it's also what if you have other people around you who are asking questions, and those questions actually lead to greater insights for you. And so this is what I find happens when we can all get together and talk about labs and talk about different markers. Because Cade, when most people go and get their labs ran, what's the feedback on how that process went with their annual physical or their doctor typically?
Typically, there's some pretty basic lab markers that they're looking at. And then as long as you're within the normal ranges of the average person that's been to that lab and ran those markers, you're considered to be within normal ranges and healthy. And if you're outside of those ranges, you're going to get diagnosed with some kind of disease.
Yeah, and usually the feedback that people give is, I was with a patient 3 days ago, and amazing gentleman from New Jersey, and he said, "Man, you went through my labs in so much greater detail than my doctor ever has." And he's in the pre-diabetic range, and his doctor said, "Well, do the Mediterranean diet." And I said, I think there's a satire, like someone wrote an article on Medium about the fact that there's 142 different Mediterranean diets. Which one? So, it's just sometimes the information we get is so vague. And one of the things we want to do is shine light on what exactly is going on under the hood. So we, as a company called Avexia, and we actually partner with LabCorp. And so we have LabCorps all over. We had a patient yesterday in South Dakota. She said, "Oh, they know who you guys are here in South Dakota." And I was pretty surprised, because we have some patients there, but it's great to hear that LabCorp is a great partner with us. But then we run it through this software called Avexia, and we get more of an optimal health result. So if you're interested in longevity, if you want to find the weak links that are going to catch up in the next 10 years, or what is called death by 1,000 cuts, then you want to look at your labs differently. And so for those of you who watch the video of this, you'll be able to see it. For those of you who are driving, I'll explain the color code, but there's yellow, red, and pink. And the yellow are the parts of your blood that are outside of optimal range. And so I'm sharing an example of a patient who'd come in, and he had long COVID. It nearly wiped him out. He also, enormous amount of stress. And as we ran his labs, we saw there's a lot of things going on that really surprised him. And you can see he's got, as far as markers in the yellow, he had 15 that were above optimal, 9 that were below optimal. So that's 24 markers outside of functional range or optimal range. He had 10 that were in the standard range, 8 were above, 2 were below. And so those are the disease patterns that will show up on any blood labs. And then 5 were in the pink range. And so that's where it's a crisis. And as we went through the labs, there's a lot of symptoms that he had that he didn't even realize that he'd had those, because he'd lived so long with these symptoms, like the afternoon crashes, where he's like, "Man, I just, 2 or 3 o'clock, I just crash, or I eat something and I need something sweet right away." And we realized, well, your hemoglobin A1C is 6.2, and anything 5.7 to, in the 6 range, 6.5 is like that pre-diabetes. And so he had some massive amounts of dysglycemia, and his insulin fasting was elevated. And so we talked to him about the fact that he needs something sweet or feels tired after he eats is due to blood sugar dysregulation. And so his blood sugar was all over the place, and that causes a massive amount of oxidative stress. But, as we go through this with the group, it's pretty interesting to see, because one of the markers that we find is that a lot of people who are very busy, high levels of stress, maybe you're a dad, a mom, you're running a business, you're a busy professional, these markers will be off, and that's your sodium potassium ratios. So Kate, if you look at this here, you can see the sodium potassium ratios, his are very low, 27, which is lower than functional, which is 30 to 35, and that relates to the adrenal glands. So what kind of symptoms would you think would go on if someone had these low sodium potassium ratios as it relates to the adrenals?
lot of fatigue, low energy, lightheaded when you stand up.
Yeah. Yeah, the dizziness is a big thing. And I was like, yeah, do you get winded when you walk upstairs? And he's like, yeah, and that's never happened. He's super fit, but it's because his adrenal glands were just expired.
Real quick, I hope you're enjoying the show, but if you're somebody who wants to take your health to the next level, maybe you're an entrepreneur and you realize that you are your only impediment to growth. Maybe you have kids that you're chasing around or grandkids. Maybe your knees are starting to ache. You're starting to notice that aging is catching up. We'll schedule an appointment with one of our health ascension specialists so that we can get the right labs ran for you. And then my team and I can review those labs, meet with you, and get you a personalized peptide protocol put together. And that will help you recover your health, feel, look, and perform your best no matter what age you are. All you need to do is text or call us at 801-582-2011. I hope you're enjoying the show, and I can't wait to talk to you soon.
So pretty interesting as you look at that, and that usually relates to dehydration and a lack of electrolytes, but long-term, it causes chronic kidney disease, which we see a lot of chronic kidney disease in our practice, and it can be prevented in most cases, but you've got to protect the adrenals and you've got to protect these electrolyte balances. The other marker that most doctors don't talk about is called the Anion Gap. And the Anion Gap is very interesting because it shows the movement of electrolytes, but it also shows if you've got too much acidity in your blood. And so it's a very important indicator of long-term nutrient deficiencies. And it also shows when your adrenal glands aren't functioning well. And so if you can get this marker improved, you're going to see a massive improvement in your overall energy levels, your mental clarity, just your performance improves in life. So very interesting, because when we've run these labs, we'll have 30 people in a room, and we will find that about 95% of them have this marker that's outside of functional or optimal ranges. And this is something that's missed so frequently.
Yeah, I think this is the beautiful thing of these labs, is really looking at things from, multidimensional aspect. So you have, the disease patterns, or the severe ranges, but then you're also looking at, even if it's not optimal, that suboptimal range is really where you can identify opportunities where most your places are going to look at that and say, everything looks a-okay. You're as good as new, or I wish my labs looked as good as yours, as we've heard before. And
right.
At the end of the day, there's actually a lot of things to work on and to improve, so you don't get into that disease pattern.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you look at the other marker that's very interesting is the protein totals. His are 6.6. And yesterday we gave a whole podcast on protein and how important it is, because, to build muscle, which is what we need to really improve longevity. The great thing about it is if you can increase protein synthesis by eating more protein, that's one way. You can also increase protein synthesis by putting strain on your muscles. But when we look at your labs, we can actually see if you're getting enough protein in your diet. And this individual wasn't. His blood urea nitrogen, his Boone levels showed that he could digest the proteins, which is sometimes we're eating a lot, but we're not digesting it. And that's where you end up with pretty stinky flatulence. That's one of the markers. So if your friend or your spouse, your partner has stinky flatulence, you can not take offense, and you can just let them know you need more enzymes to break down your proteins. No, it's okay to, yes, you need lots of help in that department, buddy. But
sure
it's
digestive enzymes, break that protein down.
Get those in. It's really important, because remember, our protein synthesis as we age, it drops. And as I shared in the last hack, is We lose 1% of muscle mass every year. We lose anywhere from 2 to 4% of muscle strength. And then we lose 8 to 10% of power. And power is the ability to shift and move your body quickly. Like if you slip on ice or if you need to, catch something. And that's usually when we fall, is when we have those moments, and it's just like a split second where we need our proprioception and our balance, and coupled with power. That's the biggest risk. And so this is why protein becomes so essential as we age, because it's one of those macronutrients that doesn't have a place to get stored. We can store carbohydrates as sugar in our liver, and our liver does great at converting it into glucagon, and we can have sugar storage for over 12 hours in our liver, which is why we want you to wait until you eat, fast at least 12 hours out of the day. But the other thing we store are fats, and fats can get stored in our liver. They can get stored in tissue. They get stored around our visceral organs. But protein, it gets stored as muscle, and muscle is our largest organ in the body. And it's one that's very beautiful and synchronized. And so looking at labs is really critical, because how many times are you getting very direct guidance on how much protein you're eating, if it's positive or negative, or if it's actually helping facilitate your overall growth in life. And so as we do these labs, it's really fun, because when you read them as a group, you'll start to see that people have realizations like, oh man, I've just been eating vegetables because I heard that's exactly what I need. And we're like, well, vegetables are great and you want to keep doing that, but there's some amazing benefits that can come when you add in more protein, and then maybe people need more fat. And so I'll share with you another lab that we'll do when it comes to fats. But one of the cool things that we've been having requests over and over again is Reagan, will you do more classes on labs and regenerative medicine and peptides? And so a lot of our members want a little more science that's directly related to you. And so in our new space, we're moving to our new location. Monday will be in our Midvale location. So today is our very last day in Salt Lake, or when this podcast is published, we'll already be in our new space. But we will also be having classes. I'll be teaching those every Tuesday from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock. We'll be on lab values, regenerative medicine, how to maximize your stem cells. We'll talk about peptides, anything that you want, but we're going to have worksheets that are related to those, so that you can actually have an experience where you learn a lot more about your labs, and it's in a group setting, which means you're going to meet some really cool friends and great people. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I think it's just a whole new concept of learning, as opposed to, sitting in a classroom and going through PowerPoints and learning that way. You're actually actively learning, and you'll have some these worksheets that you've developed are just transformational when it comes to health and understanding and learning. And so I'm really excited about these classes. I think people are going to gain so much out of that, and really fun.
Should be exciting. All right, so some of the things that we cover in labs are like, we can see how your calcium phosphorus ratios are, your alk phos, I mentioned that marker, ALT, AST. This shows us how well your liver is functioning, and ALT is one of those markers in your liver that gives us an indication of can your liver break down proteins, and can you detoxify from sugar metabolism and alcohol metabolism. But when ALT gets backed up, that's when we start developing sarcopenia, and that's where a peptide called Sarcotropin Ipamorelin is one of the best for any kind of sarcopenic tendencies. If we look at this particular lab, one of the great ways you can lower Anion Gap with peptides is you add BPC 157 with KPV. That actually changes the gastric secretions so that you get more nutrient absorption, and especially if you've got either high or low alk phos, then what those peptides will do is they'll help repair the intestinal lining. And there's one study that was really fascinating on KPV is where they induced colitis in mice, and one group of mice just got water. The other group of mice got water with KPV in it, and the colitis in the group that had water just continued to fester and stay present, whereas the mice that actually had the KPV in their water, their colitis actually went into remission. So, and I know many of you are like, well, I don't have colitis. Well, it's actually, the goal is not to get colitis and then, try these therapies, but peptides are natural expressions in your body, and KPV is made right there. It's a tripeptide, and it's made right there in those endothelial cells, along with BPC 157, which is made by the gastric secretions in your stomach. And so if you have adequate amounts of those, and those start dwindling, the peptides lower as we age, as do your hormones. And so if you can keep the tank refilled at the right time, then your whole genetic expression starts to shift. And so one of the beauties that we talk about as we go through labs is we say, well, here's some great ways you can correct this. This is like where ferritin, if ferritin's high in any of you, it causes oxidative stress and damage to your cardiovascular system. And so we may put in therapies like I mentioned, Sarcotropin, Ipamorelin. That's got some of the growth hormones, secretagogue peptides in it. It's got L-citrulline, L-arginine. It's also got DMAO for your brain. And then it's got vitamin K2 and D3, which actually helps clean out the arteries. So, so there's some phenomenal things that you can do when you actually get the right lab values. And, there's other tests that will run like metabolomics or gut health. But one of the core tests that we do focus on is your blood review. So for those of you who are like, man, I would really love to go deeper, make sure you sign up for the class coming up, the lab review class. And I promise you it'll be fascinating, interesting. We make it as short as it can be, but no longer than about 45 minutes. We'll have it live. We'll also have it Zoom, because I know so many of you are in the virtual world, but you'll meet some great people. And then for those of you who have masterminds and you'd say, man, I would love to have Reagan come and present and maybe share some things with our audience about their blood work. Well, reach out. You can email me directly at reagan@acueastwest.com, and I'm happy to see if your group would be a right fit for us. So that's it for today.
Yeah, I think those are we're actually have one of those coming up with another group that we're working with this mastermind, and I think these will just be transformational. So yeah, if you have an organization that you'd like to work with a retreat, reach out to us. They're going to be awesome. So thanks so much, Reagan. I think when we can understand what's going on in our physiology and what's going on with our blood, the transformations that people can make with just knowing the right nutrient, the right ingredients to put in our body, the right actions to take, I think it's so impactful and so important. So these are all really important things to consider and look at when you're looking at optimizing your health, because this, Unreasonable Health, the podcast is all around creating just an ever-changing and ever transforming health experience for yourself. And so to make sure if you're not already doing this, get some labs ran regularly and look at it from a fine-tooth comb rather than just a general overview, so you can really optimize that. So thanks so much, Reagan. Appreciate your content as usual. Just amazing stuff. So hope everyone has an amazing day, and we'll see you on the other side. See you, everybody.
Bye-bye.